Hello and welcome to Newt World Order. Anyone here afraid of goblins? I feel like these days goblins are just a joke. No one takes them seriously, nobody's scared of them, they're disrespected. People have it easy these days. I mean, what are they afraid of? Internet censorship, inflation, 5G, 6G? Imagine goblins coming into your house at night and doing like, I don't know what goblins do, but goblin things. Frankly, I don't even want to know what goblins do, but just imagine that. Oh, well, when did people have to fear about goblins? 1955, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Hopkinsville Goblins. Ever heard of them? Perhaps you know them by these names. And today we'll be making a sculpture of the Hopkinsville Goblin. Why? Because it deserves to be remembered, that's why. We'll be doing that after a little segment where I talk about the story of all this taking place. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Phil. Phil, he's in the oil industry, I'll leave it at that. But thanks to Phil and thank you for watching. So our story starts out, we've got this family of 11 and they're living in a farmhouse near Hopkinsville, Kentucky, but it's a fairly secluded place. They really don't have any neighbors too nearby them. One of the adults goes outside one night in August to get water from a well. While doing so, he heard a strange noise that came from the sky. He looked up and he saw what he said was a spaceship with rainbow exhaust. What does rainbow exhaust even mean exactly? I don't know, who could say? Anyway, he claims to have seen the ship come in for a landing beyond the wood line. He goes in, tells his family, they don't care, no one cares, no one ever cares. And then a little while later, they hear the family dog barking, they go out to investigate, and they see, wouldn't you know it, a small little goblin guy hiding in the forest amidst a strange glow. So I guess at this point, the little goblin alien guy, he started walking towards the family with his arms up in the air like some kind of weird monster mash dance. And as a response to this, the family basically said, nope, and went and got their family guns and started shooting at it, which, sure, yeah, why not? Also, let's address the fact, they're called goblins, the Hopkinsville Goblins, but they're clearly aliens in this story. I don't know if a goblin can also be an alien. Gob-alien? Galien? Yeah, the rainbow would make sense in that case. Soon afterwards, the mother of the household was looking out the window when this event took place. We'll do a little reenactment here. Hey. One of the guys heard her screaming to where they rushed over to where this happened. Someone order a bag of fries. That's exactly how it happened. And the bullet apparently made a metallic sound when it hit the creature, which makes sense because the creature kind of looked like it was made out of metal. It was all shiny and metallic like Pac-Man from Pac-Man World 2 with the metal power-up. But the gunshot really did no damage to it. The creature just kind of brushed it off. It may have been hurt emotionally, as you can see in this picture here, but it just kind of scurried away afterwards. Then they waited on the porch for a while to see if it would come back until this happened. I think I done scared that little rascal off with my fearless demeanor. Jim, you gotta teach me to shoot like that. Well, you see here, Cloney, my name's Billy Ray Taylor. The trick is, every time I pull that trigger, I see the face of everyone who ever made fun of my... Alright, I'll stop with the reenactments. It's getting out of hand here. But yeah, the creature was on the roof and it grabbed apparently the hair of one of the men there and that freaked him out and everyone went inside after that. So then for a while, they essentially played whack-a-mole with the creatures. They'd pop up in the window. They really liked looking through the windows for some reason. And then they'd shoot at them and they'd get shot away from the window. Apparently the creatures were very floaty, like a balloon filled with air. And they'd walk up to the house on two legs and then they'd get shot and kind of float / scurry away on all fours. They also apparently weren't very fond of light. They would stay away from the porch lights. This whole thing started around 9 p.m. and lasted a couple hours until 11. When things started to slow down a bit. So once they felt things had settled down, they decided to leave the house and go to the police. So they went to the police, they told them their story, they asked for any kind of help, and obviously the police are going to be like, yes, hell yes, let's hunt some aliens. I feel like every police officer at some point in the back of their minds hopes that they'll be able to hunt aliens. Then at around 1 a.m. they all start to head back to the house, accompanied by some police officers and also some military officers from the local Campbell military base, which is kind of interesting. In addition, a couple reporters came to document things, and even a couple locals showed up to go alien hunting as well, which I really can't blame them, man. One of the police on the way there said that he saw 2 meteors in the sky. Unfortunately, when they arrived at the house, the only thing that they really found there were remnants of a shootout. You know, ammo scattered everywhere, some broken objects. And they were ready to rumble. Apparently one of the officers accidentally startled a cat, and everyone freaked out and drew their weapons. They didn't even try to communicate. These aliens, you know, they could have been the most chill aliens in the galaxy. They could have came with like a Fast and Furious on Blu-ray and a bag of space Doritos and asked to just hang out, sit on a beanbag chair, I don't know, and they still would have just been shot at. So you know what? I don't blame the aliens for not showing up at this point. But I guess in the investigation that they did, the police did see a couple odd things, one of which was a patch of grass that seemed to glow from certain angles. Maybe one of the aliens peed there? I don't know. But yeah, after a while, the investigation kind of ended in vain, and all the house members decided to turn in for the night. And then, at around 3:30 a.m., this happened. Hey, could I have 1 glass of milk? Sorry, I said I'd stop the reenactments. I wanted to do one more. But yeah, the creatures came back, and the whole whack-a-mole thing shootout started over again. This time much more brief. I feel like the aliens, whatever they wanted, they realized they weren't going to get it. They were just like, peace out, and they left, and then they never returned. Also, I just want to say, apparently one of the guys said, this is a quote, he said, "Mama, I'm gonna shoot that little man," which, that's just the greatest thing ever. And that's it. That's basically the story. The Hopkinsville Goblins never came back after that, and it became a very big, very sensationalized story across the nation. This whole Hopkinsville Goblin event has since served as inspiration for many different franchises and characters, including but not limited to the Critters franchise. Gremlins to an extent, Sableye from, I think that's how you say it, from Pokemon, Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, used to love that show, E.T. the extraterrestrial, and it helped popularize the idea of little green men, even though they weren't green. And yes, just like Mothman, it has its own Goblin Con that happens every year. I'm sure it's pretty cool. Alright, woohoo, we're caught up on the lore. Now I'm going to make one of these specimens out of clay. And while I'm making it, I'll probably go over a few of my own thoughts and theories over the whole ordeal. But first, let's take a closer look as to what the creature is supposed to look like. So what you're seeing here are essentially the best representations we have of what the family saw that night. That's because the family very much did not like all the publicity that they got after this event happened. But right after it happened, they did do like 1 or 2 interviews where they described the creatures, and this is the result of that. As you can see, there are a few differences between the sketches here, but they do all share similar traits. It's really got that goblin shape with the long arms that go almost to the ground, a big head, big ears. As stated before, it was covered in something metallic, probably its skin, and it had yellow glowing eyes. No neck, and kind of a strong upper body, and then weak lower body with inflexible legs. In fact, they said it kind of waddled when it walked. It didn't bend its legs. This one here is obviously a little more different than the others. This was actually Billy Ray Taylor's interpretation of it. Hey, I think we met him. But yeah, he said he saw antenna on it and had a nose that was kind of cone shaped and ended in a ball, kind of like Rob Lucci's beard from One Piece. Which, side note, I don't know why, but that thing pisses me off every time I see it. But I guess the other family members were pretty adamant that it didn't have a nose, and I guess he changed his mind later on. It's kind of a weird mistake to make in the first place. Like, that's a very specific nose with a ball on the end. I don't know. The only thing I like about this one, it has suction cup feet. That's just cute, honestly. Imagine the sound as it walks. But I guess this drawing here is supposed to be the most accurate from everything I've seen, which is good because I actually like this one the most anyway. I like its round head. It looks like a coconut. Okay, on to the sculpture. What am I doing here? I don't know.
Wire.
Alright, as per usual, we're making the skeleton for the sculpture first out of this wire here. It's going to be a fairly decent sized sculpture. It's probably going to be about as big as my hand by the time we're done. And I think it's kind of funny, just with the foil here, it already looks how the goblin is supposed to look with the metallic skin. But I would be very sad if I didn't use any clay. I'd go into a deep and long depression for 3 months. So we're introducing some clay here, and it does have some of this like sparkly silver clay that I put into the gray here. So it does look kind of metally. Eh. We don't need no education. Dun, 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 dun. But yeah, while you watch me do my thing here, I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit, just some of my thoughts about this whole event that took place. So the way I see it, there's really only two possibilities. It either happened, aliens came down and terrorized a family, or it didn't. And I'll say there's really not a good explanation. No matter what the possibility is, it's a really weird situation. Let's start by assuming that it didn't happen, that there were no aliens or creatures of any kind that came onto the farm. In that case, there's another two possibilities. The family either knew that there were no aliens and made it up, or thought there were aliens when there actually weren't. Let's explore the possibility of them being mistaken and thinking there were aliens. One of the most common probable explanations in this scenario is that they mistook an owl for an alien. And I'll admit, this was one of my first thoughts too, because a lot of things do line up with this owl theory. A lot of owls have yellow reflective eyes. It's about the size of an owl. I guess owls will sometimes lift their wings up as some kind of display of intimidation. It's sort of like how it was said the aliens raised their arms up when they approached. Some owls have the weird top horn things on their head. What are they called? They're called plumicorns. Interesting. That's kind of cute. But yeah, they kind of look like the ears. They both have talons. They both kind of waddle when they walk. A lot of things line up, honestly. And if you know anything about cryptids, you know a lot of explanations for cryptids are just owls. Owls are just creepy guys, man. Also, although it's implied that there were multiple creatures attacking and harassing the family at once due to the sheer frequency of it all, they only ever saw one creature at a time. So if it were an owl, it's possible it was just flying around frantically all over the place. It does make sense. The problems, though, which I'm sure some of you are thinking, is that these guys that experienced this were farmers. They were very familiar with nature. They probably know what an owl looked like, and this wasn't just like a quick event. This took place over hours, over the whole night. So it would be difficult, to say the least, to somehow, after that amount of time and the knowledge they probably have, to mistake an owl for an alien. It'd be very strange. The only way I really see the owl theory holding up is if they like drank some tainted water or some kind of weird grapes or something beforehand, and they were like mildly hallucinating. But even then, like, they would all the family members, all 11 of them, would have to be hallucinating the same thing at the same time, because they all gave very consistent descriptions of what they encountered afterwards to the authorities. So it's strange. The only other way I really see the owl theory holding up is if it were an owl and they knew it was an owl, and they were shooting at it with their shotguns for hours and missed, and then out of sheer embarrassment, they just had to tell everyone that it was an alien, because that would be embarrassing to be attacked by an owl for that long of time and basically lose the battle. I mean, at that point, I'd probably do the same thing. Yeah, no, it was definitely aliens. You know, the bullets didn't hurt them. I had a perfect shot every time. Bullets didn't hurt him though, nope. Scenario 2, and this one I also had a feeling about. It almost sounds like a prank. Like, looking back at the story, it almost sounds like someone is just messing with this family. Because the goblins, the aliens, they never tried to go inside the house. They would just look through the windows. Like, why would they do that? Then they leave as soon as the cops show up, and then once the cops leave, they come back. But what pranksters would ever stick around after getting shot at? I mean, granted, it was the 50s. I mean, they didn't have, like, what do the kids play these days? Roblox? They didn't have Roblox, so maybe they were just that bored that they didn't care about getting shot. They really committed to the prank. In that case, respect. Oh, wait, hold on. Everyone, shut up. We're doing the suction cup feat. I just wish they made the sound. Another scenario that I find kind of interesting that falls in line with a prank is the idea that the government may have staged a hoax on this family without them knowing. This is one that Bob Gimlin brought up on his YouTube video about this, which you should check out. And it's more in the conspiracy territory, but it deals with the fact that it may benefit the government for people in certain situations to think that there are aliens. And so this was the 50s. It was a time where the government was doing plenty of experimenting. Perhaps they were doing this to see what kind of reaction that the public would have to the media presenting a story like this. Who knows? Who knows? So let's discuss a scenario where the family did know that there weren't any aliens and said that there were anyway. In other words, a hoax. This one's interesting to me. A hoax usually seems like a very reasonable answer to a situation like this. But as I stated once before, the family was very annoyed by all the attention that they got from this event. And it did become big news, so there were a lot of spectators that in the coming weeks came to their farmhouse to try to look for aliens. They even called the police because they wanted people off their property, but they couldn't get people off their property. I guess at some point someone in the family did try charging some of the spectators because they wouldn't leave admission tickets to at least try to make some money off of it. But as far as I know, they never really profited off things, and that never really panned out well. So it was really more of a burden than any kind of benefit. And no one really talked about it for years afterwards. As for the character and the trustworthiness of the people in the family, from what I've seen, all their neighbors and friends and people that knew them really vouched for them as honest people that probably wouldn't make up something like that as a hoax. Honestly, you know what the strangest thing is out of all of this to me? Is that ship that the guy sees at the very start of this before they see any of the goblins or anything. That ship with the rainbow exhaust or whatever. Because without that one very important detail, you wouldn't necessarily assume that the creatures are aliens. You might assume that they actually are goblins or ghosts because they were all floaty. It's quite the coincidence that he went outside at the perfect moment to get that very important context for this story. And if this was something that was orchestrated by the government or whatever, like we discussed earlier, you'd think that they'd make the ship more obvious so that everyone would see it or hear it and come outside. But no, instead only one person was able to hear it and see it. That's very strange. It strikes me as someone wanting to make a hoax to tell a story about aliens, but they couldn't figure out how to prove they're aliens, so he included this part to show that they're definitely aliens. And alien stories were very popular at the time. There was the Flatwoods Monster, there was tons of stuff going on. It was popular in comic books, I think, I don't know. Either way, it's just very strange that there's essentially two major events that took place here. There's the goblin shootout thing, and then there's seeing a rainbow exhaust spaceship thing in the sky. But at the same time, there were 11 people in that household. Each of those people had a very similar rendition of the events that took place. So in order for it to be a hoax, they would have had to get all 11 people on board and get all of their stories consistent for when they tell the police. And by the way, I didn't mention this because I didn't get into anything too specific, but three of those people were the wives of three brothers. So, I mean, it's one thing if it's a group of guys to do a stupid prank like this, but to convince your wives to do something this stupid, I don't know. That's another level. Plus, I think like 3 of the 11 were also children, and they trashed their house. There was like windows shot up and shotgun shells everywhere. They would have to have been very committed. But then again, you always have to consider thinking of it in terms of what's more likely. That some space aliens that look like goblins would come to a farm from light years away just to screw around, or that a seemingly trustworthy family of farmers would make a hoax like this. Either way, it's weird. Either way, it's a bit strange. But hey, what if there are real aliens or creatures of some kind that decided to terrorize that family that night? That is a possibility. If they were real aliens, like I said before, I genuinely feel bad for them, because they weren't hurting anyone. At least I don't think so. I mean, they literally put their hands up when approaching. Like, dude, it sounds to me like they're surrendering. They're literally saying, "We come in peace," and then they just get shot at. So maybe that was the one time aliens really did visit Earth, and that's why they haven't returned since. And yeah, there's the argument, if if an alien species had the technology to come to Earth, why would they do something so stupid as to just go to a random farm like that? And yeah, no, that's an argument. It's a valid argument. So valid, in fact, that I don't think it really needs to be explained any further. Honestly, maybe it really is just goblins, because in that area there's a lot of caves, and there's even apparently stories of goblins running around in the caves. Oh, hey, look at that. We're just about ready to bake our little goblin guy. While our little guy here bakes in the oven, here's a quick look at a couple similar cryptids that I found. The cave cow from the late 1800s, the Cherokee legend of the moon-eyed people, and the creature from the Ilkley Moor photograph. I thought this image was great. Look, there's a red circle so you can see it. And to anyone watching, yes, I do know about Hellier. I watched like an episode and a half, started getting Curse of Oak Island vibes. I looked it up, and the whole premise of the show is, I guess, based on a hoax, so I was displeased with that. Alright, it's done baking. It looks pretty good. Shockingly, it still stands up. But you can use a little Will Smith from the movie Independence Day Funko Pop to help him out. Just in case. He can, his arms out so he can lean on things like Will Smith, Independence Day. We're going to try something. We've got Elmer's glue, clear, $5.99, Hobby Lobby. See, I've done this before in the past with epoxy, putting like an eye shine on the sculpture, but after recent events, we're gonna try Elmer's glue instead. And here we have the finished product. The Elmer's glue actually worked okay, and I will say I like it. It looks pretty accurate to what we have to go off of, and it's just like a little guy that stands there. I don't know, I think it's cute. Look at his little suction cup feet. I don't think I really showed the back much. I just gave it some dark patches for a little bit of variety. I'm still kind of shocked that it stands on its own. Right now, as I'm editing next to me, it has the Will Smith for support still because I don't trust it, but it stands. It is a little creepy. Like, if you saw that at night and it was just walking towards you, I could understand being a little bit scared. I still don't think you should shoot it, but yeah, it's kind of creepy. But I also kind of want to pet it, so thanks to everyone for watching. I know there was a lot of blabbing in this one. I just kind of had to get my thoughts out about it all, because it is a really interesting situation. It's very strange. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.